Welcome back. You're watching a CNBC TV18 special coming to you from the NASSCOM conclave in New Delhi. Chandrashekhar, you made a point, saying that it's really important now to governments and industry to be sort of, engaging on a regular basis to understand what's happening. So in that sense, tell us some of the initiatives that NASSCOM is taking to prepare the government for this technological revolution that you're talking about in your report.
Yeah, right from the advent of this government and its emphasis on Digital India and Startup India and innovation. What we have been advocating is the need for a body which has both government and industry to look at some of these issues and look at what are the regulatory arrangements which retard the progress of this whole digital revolution. And the second is, what are the positive things that the government can do to actually accelerate the move towards digital economy. And that's critical, because one way is to just allow natural forces to take place. Technology provides solutions, millions of people come in, and then once there are millions of people who find that this is very convenient and useful, then it becomes very difficult for the governments in practice to actually prevent it or to in any way retard it. But I think that it needs a lot more than just being reactive and saying, okay, let's see how it goes and then we will figure out what to do.
Why don't you just add on that, Mr. Reddy, in terms of, you also have a company. So tell us a little bit about, is it somewhere worries you also that I hope the government sort of understands some of the innovations that's happening in your R&D?
I think the government certainly is understanding what the changes are. We think we are at a point of time we are very fortunate because A, we have a technology disruption that's happening, B, we have an opportunity which is there, and C is an understanding government. If you look at the combination of all of these three things, I think it was a part of MGI report too, where these technologies in developing countries like India could provide social equalizers, can become social equalizers. Take the example of, again, my favorite IoT. You can put it into agriculture, which wasn't possible at this point of time. The poor farmer does not know how much of water has to go into his plant, or what's the time for him to go and put the water there. Or to the remotest of locations that we have today, we don't have healthcare. The healthcare professional does not want to go there. But you can do those with the new technologies that are coming in. You have low-cost equipment, etc. I think the government recognizes that. And I certainly salute the government for one single reason, is that the key for all this to happen is the digital connectivity. We'll come to applications the next step. The amount of focus and thrust that they're putting on connectivity makes me believe that I think they're on the right path. They recognize the benefits that are going to occur on account of this.
In the context of leadership and CEOs, what implications will it have?
I think it has pretty serious implications, because we used to focus in the past, and I mean that literally 2 to 3 years ago, much more on what leaders did. This is how you align your organization, this is where you spend your time, this is how you communicate. It was more on the what you do, which is important. But because in this world we're beginning to go into, which is changing so quickly, you can't predict what it's going to be, who your competitors might be, what type of skills are going to be required, right? What the regulations might be. There's a lot of uncertainty, a lot of opportunity. So it's going to be much more on who leaders are, the character of the leader. Is this person resilient, first of all? Because you will get setbacks, and will you be able to get back up on your feet and move forward? Can you compartmentalize things? Can you be long-term? While all these things are changing, you have to have a long lens, a telescope, and you have to have a microscope at the same time in the other eye, which I've never done that, but I think it would give you a headache if so you have to have this long, short view. You have to work it much more in teams than ever before. We're now looking a lot at the organization of the future, and we're seeing that it isn't these boxes all stacking up into the CEO. You can't run an organization. It's way flatter.
If you look at the profile of the Indian companies as the Fortune 500 companies. There are about 8 big corporations, but 5 of them are primarily into the oil business. So in that sense, is that a bit of a, disappointment? We have not seen that sort of bottom-up, technological revolution, which many of the other Fortune 500 companies from China and the other countries are in that list. So in that sense, 5 out of 8 being in natural resource primarily, is that a bit of a surprise, disappointment?
No, I think it follows the pattern of many industries, and the question is, well, how do you actually define the largest or the best, right? And there are multiple ways, right? And if you looked at market capitalization as another metric, right, you may actually look at one of the fastest growing growth that has actually occurred in the market capitalization on the Indian bourses certainly has actually been from the technology sector, right? If you look at it, it has powered the growth actually of many of the large Indian business groups as well. And most companies today, I don't know what you could call a bank. Could you argue that a bank has obviously trust in the branding of the customer? It has massive technology, right? And it's about risk management, right? So what is a bank? Is it a technology company in the future? Right. And certainly I think one of the things that this government, we talk about a lot of the government, right? But if you look at the regulations that are enabling, right? There's been a phenomenal amount of innovation in regulations in India, right? The payment bank creation is actually the first creation from India. It's not anywhere else in the world, right? So I think as much as we say we want more, we should also celebrate what has been done. And we end with a note that says, look, we can't predict the future. We can only say that we're both excited and terrified by it. Right? We're excited because it's a huge potential. We're terrified because, honestly, you cannot navigate it.
Right. And before we wrap this up, gentlemen, let's just quickly talk a bit about the entrepreneurship and the startup culture. Because the IT space, it has a good record, year-on-year, 14% growth in entrepreneurial ventures. But what will now be required to take the next big leap forward? Because recently we also made a proposal to the government for having an STPI sort of a scheme for startups. So Chandrashekhar, come in, and then after that I'll ask you, Mr. Reddy.
I think for the past couple of decades, the IT sector has largely been seen from a revenue perspective. That's because it's been dominated by the IT services industries. But now with the startups growing and mushrooming, it's going to be more about valuations, it's going to be more about products, it's going to be more about solutions, it's going to be more about transformation. So I think that is a very big shift in terms of how the sector would be looked at. And as Noshir was mentioning, it's not only anymore about what's happening within the IT sector, it's what the IT sector is doing to every other sector. And that's what is going to have a huge multiplier effect on the economy as a whole. And that, I think, is what gives confidence that this sector can well be the sector of destiny for India to change the future.
There is definitely a requirement in terms of specialization of the domain. So domain becomes extremely important, and that's one thing which also comes out of the McKinsey report. Domain knowledge is very critical in terms of doing these applications, or you have to be use case specialists, which means that you have to do that particular application to prove to the world that you're the best in the world. So to that extent, I guess there may be a few limitations for India, but that can be circumvented because number of our customers are asking us to do those applications. They're trusting us. They're trusting in terms of our capability. So we go ahead and implement them. As a result, it can be implemented for many others.
The big challenge, however, many would say for the entrepreneurial culture or this, the startup scene in India is venture capitals are still looking for short-term returns. And you've also said in the past that continues to be a big problem overall. How does one overcome that?
Well, I think having, first of all, the venture capital money is critical. I mean, that's one of the challenges with people trying to mimic the Silicon Valley. The part that people forget about is just the amount of capital that's there. And you need long-term money, actually, to be able to do that. We need more institutional money, because these are bets. 1 in 10,000 actually work. You need to have, and you can't just say, I'm going to pick one and it's going to work. So you have to have that money that's long-term to know that, I know that very few are going to work, but there will be a number, the unicorn that will, and that's going to make it all right.
Well, unfortunately, gentlemen, we've completely run out of time, and that is the big takeaway, that technology has to be leveraged by the Indian IT sector if it were to leapfrog in the coming 5 to 10 years. Thanks very much for watching the CNBC TV 18 special. Until next time.